start by talking about some advanced geocoding techniques in Maptitude. Maptitude does include a Create a Map wizard, which makes mapping your data or opening existing maps very easy. And I'm going to start by creating a map of my own data. And this spreadsheet that I have containing my data has a variety of information, including customer addresses. I do want to take note at this point in time that if your data includes coordinates, that the process will be slightly different, and I'll make note of that, and that's just for the first couple of steps of the process. I've identified my sheet that contains my customer information, and Maptitude presents me with the match dialog in the Create a Map wizard that allows me to identify the appropriate fields for each geographic component that Maptitude is looking for. My data file has street addresses as well as a city, a zip code, and a state field. I also have a variety of other information located in this data sheet. My data sheet does have longitude and latitude. I'm not going to be using them for this particular example. However, if you do have longitude and latitude, then there will be a slight modification, and I'm going to mention what that is on the next screen. Most users have a simple street address as well as city and state and zip code information. My field matches are correct. If they weren't, or if I had multiple address fields, I can simply click in the white area under Your Fields to identify the appropriate field. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. For those of you that do have coordinate information, you always want to choose to locate records in your files by coordinates at this point. Again, for the purposes of this illustration, I'm going to assume that coordinate data are not there. So I'm going to locate the records in my file by street address and simply click Finish. When prompted for a location for the records in my file, I'm going to select that, enter a file name, and click Save. Maptitude will then go through each record in my Excel file and attempt to match it using the address information that I confirmed on that match field screen. Of the total records in my file, all but 53 were found. I'm going to go ahead and click OK to dismiss this dialog. The wizard opens the map to the area where my data are located. And the thing that I am most concerned about at this point is finding out more about those 53 records that were not located. The first thing I want to bring your attention to is the display manager on the left side of the screen. In addition to listing the layers on the map, this display manager also lists selection sets. Under Your Data, which is the data that appears as stars on the map, is a selection set named Address Not Found. This is the selection set associated with the 53 addresses that were not located using the wizard. I can open up a data view that looks directly at those records, focuses on those records by right-clicking on Address Not Found and choosing New Data View. This data view is actually tied to the entire layer, and it happens to be set to this selection set, Address Not Found. If I chose all records, all 4,800 would show. In this case, I'm looking at only the 53 that were not found. I can see that I'm looking at records 1 through 31 of 53 by looking at the status bar located at the lower left corner of my Maptitude window. The latitude and longitude fields do indeed appear blank, and I have a listing of the particular addresses that were not found. What I'm going to begin by doing is seeing if I can locate more of these addresses. And to do that, I'm going to use the Locate by Address tool, which is accessed either by clicking the tool in the toolbar at the top of your screen, the Locate by Address tool, or by going to the Tools menu, choosing Locate, and then choosing Locate by Address. If you did initially locate coordinate, you would still do this step. This is the starting point, no matter what entry method you choose. If your coordinates were not found, you would simply go with these defaults and click OK. In this case, we have done the locating using the wizard, locating by address. And I want to go over the various points that we will be going through for the next methods in locating those 53 records. The Locate by Address dialog box is comprised of 3 tabs. On the tab that we have active, the Data to Locate tab, we have an option of what records we want to locate. By default, this is set to Address Not Found. You should always confirm that the set that you are locating is a subset of records and not all records. There's no need to relocate the 4,747 records which were successfully found in the prior matching attempt. The address fields have been correctly identified here. I'm going to next go to the Postal Codes tab. On the Postal Codes tab, options for how postal codes are handled are listed. The default, which was used with the wizard, is to use the postal code in the postal code field. That postal code field was the one identified in the Create a Map wizard in the match screen that we looked at the beginning of this session. I've already used this method, so instead of using it again, which won't give me any different results, I'm going to choose the second option. The second option is to use postal codes near the one in the postal code field. What this means is that rather than using the zip code listed for my record, Maptitude will search those zip codes which are geographically near that one for the street address that is listed in the various address components. This is a good method to use in the event that zip codes have been changing and that an address in your file may have a different zip code than that in the street file that's being used to locate the records. Once I've identified this option that I want to use, I'm going to click the OK button. Maptitude will examine the 47 records that were not found previously, 53 records, excuse me, and use the zip codes which are geographically nearby those listed for the original record in order to try and maximize my match results. In this case, of the 53 records that were not found, 13 have been located, which leaves me with 40 records of the 4,800, which still do not have geographic addresses or locations on this map. I'm going to click OK to dismiss the results dialog box. And I'm going to go back to that Locate by Address once again and see what my other options are. I still want to use this set called Address Not Found, which now has 40 records since I found 13 previously. I've exhausted what I can do by using the postal code, the zip code field. So instead of using zip codes, I'm going to change my zip code field from zip code to none. This will allow Maptitude to examine other locational fields in order to help me find the addresses which are still missing. After I've changed the zip code to none, when I click on the Postal Code tab, different options are available to me. If I did not have a city and state field in my data, I could simply type in an alternate list of postal codes if I had that list available. In this case, I have a city field and a state field. Those have already been pre-selected by Maptitude. If your data has only a city field and all of the data are located in one state, you can simply type in the state abbreviation rather than having a state field. The same is true for the city field. I do have a state field, so I'm going to select it again. Now that I have identified the city and state fields that I will use in lieu of the zip codes, I will click OK so that Maptitude can examine the remaining 40 records and attempt to locate those that were not found. Of those 40, all were located except for one. I now have 39 records that were found, one that was not found, of my original set of 4,800 records. I'm going to click OK to dismiss that dialog box. I can look at the data view of the records that were not located at any time, either by going back to the data view that is open or by going to the Display Manager and choosing a new data view. And in this case, I'm seeing that I read that results dialog box wrong, and in fact, only one record was found, and 39 are still missing. My apologies for not reading that correctly. Just kind of as a proof of what we saw before, going to go through that process once more quickly, just so that I can show you that dialog and read it correctly. I've already found the one, so those 39 were not located. It did say one here before. So now I'm left with 39 records that still haven't been located due to some mismatch in the addresses. So far, I have looked for these records using the street address as entered in my database, using the street address with the geographic nearby zip code, using the street address with the city and state that's in my database. The next thing that I'm going to do is move to a slightly less precise method of locating my data. And that is, instead of using locate by address, I will use locate by zip code for these few addresses which are remaining. To do this, I will go to the Tools menu, choose Locate, and choose Locate by zip code. I still want to use this subset of records called Address Not Found. After confirming that the zip code field identified is correct, I want to choose one of the three locate methods for locating by zip codes. It is important to understand that there are zip code points and zip code areas included in Maptitude. Zip code areas are defined by a carrier route that approximately equivalates to streets. In the case that we have here, they do match the streets exactly. There are more zip code points which are discrete delivery locations, including universities, large buildings, and post offices. There are some 10,000 more zip code points than zip code areas. The option to center your record at a zip code point will maximize the opportunity of finding a missing record. However, if there are two records that have the same zip code, they will be placed at the exact same location, and you will not be able to easily discern that there are 2 points or more than 1 point at that location. The option to scatter evenly inside a zip code area will scatter your results inside of those areas that are not discrete locations. However, you may not get as many matches. I'm going to choose the third option, to scatter within 1 mile of the zip code. This will use the zip code point, but will randomly locate each of the records in my file within 1 mile of that point in order to help prevent stacking the points on top of each other or assigning them the exact same location. I will click OK, and Maptitude is going to examine my 39 records, and it has found all of them. At this point, all of the data in my data set have been located. You may have the situation where locating by zip code still leaves some of your records without any geographic location if the zip code cannot be found, or if your database is incomplete. For example, you may not have zip codes for all of the records, but you may have city and states for those records that do not have zip codes. In this case, the next step would be to go on and use the Locate by City tool, also located under the Tools menu and the Locate submenu. Locate by City is the next level of accuracy up from address and zip code. I'm going to choose Locate by City and show you how this works, even though I've already found all of my addresses. I still have this set called Address Not Found. It does contain the 39 records that were found by zip code. I'm just going to go ahead and locate them again. Maptitude allows me to identify the field containing the city and the state. And I want to use the option in this dialog to again scatter within 1 mile of the city center. This is just like the zip code method in that scattering will help prevent points from being placed on top of one another. When I click OK, Maptitude locates the 39 records or examines the 39 records that were not found by address and attempts to locate them using their city names. In this case, I still have 2 records that were not found. I'm going to click OK to dismiss that results dialog. And I'm going to open a new data view of the city not found. So I can see that I have 2 cities that weren't found. And in this case, I believe Rollinsville is misspelled. And I'm not sure what's wrong with Hot Sulphur Springs right off the top of my head. The sulfur is misspelled in this one. So I could go in and I can manually edit these fields and fix them. The other thing that I can do is if it's not a spelling problem, if just these records can't be found for whatever reason, the other option that I have in Maptitude is to manually locate these addresses. And I can do that by going to the Locate menu and choosing Locate by Pointing, which is here. And this will allow me to manually locate any records based upon some other information I might have. My subset that has those 2 records is called City Not Found. And I'm going to go ahead and select a few more of the fields here so that I can get information displayed on each of my records and differentiate these customers. So after highlighting the fields I want to use and clicking OK, Maptitude opens up a Locate by Data, Locating Your Data dialog. It's a Locate by Pointing dialog. I only have these 2 customers. I have the 1 customer in Sulphur Springs. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use Google Earth to help me locate this customer. And having the address up in Maptitude is a nice help. I have it right next to my Google window so I can see both simultaneously. I'm going to begin by typing in the address as it appears in Maptitude and use the town as it is typed in my database. Oops, Hot Sulphur Springs, Colorado. Okay, and then I'm going to click Search. So in this case, Google has looked for this address and it wasn't able to find it using the inputs that I had, which isn't a terribly big surprise. So I'm going to go ahead and accept the address that Google has found for me and zoom in a bit. So here is my Hot Sulphur Springs location. I can then use this in Maptitude to append a point back in. So if I go back into Maptitude and I go to the Tools menu, choose Imagery and my Google Earth toolbox, this toolbox has a very helpful tool that will allow me to make Maptitude zoom to the same view as Google Earth. So what this is doing is it's actually zooming me to where the map is in Google Earth. So I can see here that, let me turn my road labels on, that I'm at Byers Ave, and this is Moffett Ave here, and I can kind of see the road where the road curves around and find the similar location here on my screen. Once I've located it, I can use the tool in the Locate by Pointing dialog in order to click in this location, therefore identifying the geographic location for this point. I can do the same for my other location, which is 57 County Road 16. And this time I'm just going to type in the zip code and see if it will find this in Google Earth. So back in Google Earth, here I am with this 57 County Road, and it's actually quite a different address than what I had typed in. This is the County Road 16 is gone, and this is some other place, and I have to decide if I think this is correct. If I do, I can again use this tool in Maptitude to zoom my map to the same location and pin it in. These are the various methods that you would use for your advanced geocoding once you use the Create a Map Wizard to locate your data. I'll take a few minutes to answer any questions that you might have before we go ahead and wrap up today. So go ahead and take this time to enter any questions if you have them. And the first question that I have is, what happens if the zip code conflicts with the latitude and longitude of a geographic location? If you already have a record pen mapped, if it already has been given a latitude and longitude, you wouldn't locate using a different method. It doesn't make sense to go over data that's already there. If you do locate data that already has a location, if you use one of the other methods, then you would just be accepting the new location by default. The next question is if Maptitude can reverse geocode, and what's being looked for, I believe in that question, is if you have a coordinate, if you can obtain the address. And Maptitude is not designed to do that. You can see what the name of the street is, but there's no way to identify the specific address associated with that point. The next question we have is, when using locate by zip code scattered within 1 mile, does that randomly place those customers, or does it place them where they're actually located? And the answer to that is that there's no way to know where they're located specifically within the zip code. Zip codes are large areas, and locating by zip code is not specific as locating by addresses. So they are randomly located when using that method. The next question, the next two questions are related to the Google Earth toolbar. It's location and utility. You'll find this under the Tools toolbar, located under Imagery as Google Earth Image Toolbox. This tool requires nothing more than having a current installation of Google Earth, and the Google Earth toolbox integrates automatically with Google Earth and allows you to zoom both Google Earth and your own Maptitude maps to synchronize with one another. So in this case, back to my initial map view, I can make Google Earth zoom to that area. So it's zoomed out to show that whole area. You can also add black and white versions of the imagery from Google Earth to your Maptitude map so that you might get more detail of a certain location. So in this particular example, if I zoom in here to these addresses, then I can capture the imagery that Google Earth has. And again, that will be in black and white, and that's a limitation that Google Earth has restricted on its imagery. So clicking that button allows the imagery to be loaded and allows me to be able to kind of get a satellite overview on my map, which can either be saved or removed. Give you just a minute to enter any additional questions that you might have. And in absence of any additional questions, I want to thank you all for attending this Advanced Geocoding webinar. This webinar will be followed up in a couple of hours with an email which shows you